Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are opening up the user's guide to what is probably the most powerful operating system on the planet, your own emotional life. We're going to get super practical here and dig into not just what emotions are, but how we can actually work with them to make better decisions, build way stronger relationships, and honestly, just live with a little more purpose. All right, let's just dive right in with this massive idea from neuroscientist Antonio Damasio. This quote completely flips the script on how we usually think about ourselves, right? We tend to put logic and reason up on a pedestal, and we see feelings as this messy, irrational distraction. But science is telling us a totally different story. Our emotional systems aren't some separate thing from our reasoning. They are fundamentally tangled up together. Emotions aren't the enemy of thought. They're the very foundation our thinking is built on. So, keeping that in mind, why is this whole conversation about emotional intelligence, or EQ, so darn important right now? Let's set the stage. I mean, we're living in a kind of wild time. Stress levels are through the roof, and it's hitting us at work, at home. It's even affecting our kids. And it's weird, right? There's this paradox where we have more technology than ever before to connect us, but so many of us are feeling more isolated and disconnected than ever. And that combination of high stress and low connection, it's toxic. It just makes us more reactive, more impatient, and way less effective at dealing with, well, life. So that leads us right to the big question of this whole explainer. In the middle of all this chaos, how do we get smarter with our feelings? How do we use this fundamental part of who we are, not as a weakness, but as a genuine superpower? That is exactly what we are about to break down. So, what even is emotional intelligence? Well, at its heart, it's a really simple but powerful idea. It's not about stuffing your emotions down, and it's not about letting them run wild either. It's about seeing that every single feeling you have, well, it's just data. It's information. EQ is the skill of tuning into that data stream, figuring out what it's telling you, and then using that info to guide your thoughts and actions so you can get the best possible results. Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we've got to go a little deeper. Let's start decoding our own inner worlds by looking at the pure biology of what it even means to feel something.
This gets right to a key scientific truth. Emotions are not some abstract thing. They are physical. They are literally chemicals, hormones, and tiny proteins that are cooked up in our brains and glands. And these chemicals are mixed right in with the chemicals that create our thoughts. You just can't separate them. They're constantly messing with our most basic bodily functions, our heart rate, our digestion, our immune system. So trying to leave emotions out of it is, well, it's totally illogical. It's like trying to leave your lungs out of a conversation about breathing. It's just part of the system.
And get this. Here's a super practical, fascinating biological fact. When an emotion gets triggered, it takes about 6 seconds for that chemical cocktail to get released, travel all the way through your bloodstream, and deliver its message. Just 6 seconds. That's not just some random number, you guys. That is a window of opportunity. It means that the first automatic rush of a feeling is just a temporary chemical thing. What happens after those 6 seconds? Well, that's up to us. We get to choose whether we refuel that feeling or if we shift our attention somewhere else. Okay, let's make things a little more complicated because, well, they are. Our inner world is not a one-note song. It is a full-on symphony. Think about a time you were anxious about a big presentation. Yeah, the main feeling might be fear. But if you really stopped and looked closer, you might also find some excitement about the opportunity, right? Maybe a little hope for a good outcome, and probably some frustration with yourself for being so nervous. These feelings don't just cancel each other out. They create this rich and, yeah, sometimes confusing emotional soup. And just acknowledging that complexity is a giant leap towards getting some clarity.
All right, so we know they're biological, we know they're complex. But what's the point? What are they even for? This brings us to one of the most important mindset shifts in emotional intelligence, seeing emotions not as noise you have to ignore, but as data you have to analyze.
See, every single feeling you have has a job to do. It's a biological message that's designed to do two things. First, it focuses your attention on something, either an opportunity or a threat. Joy is basically yelling, "Hey, you noticing how awesome this is? Let's do more of this." And fear is tapping you on the shoulder saying, you seen this potential danger over here? We should probably be careful. Second, it gives you the energy to act. Your emotions are basically your brain's headline news, telling you what matters right now. And to help us decode all those messages, there's this amazing tool called Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions. Think of it like a color wheel, but for your feelings. It organizes 8 primary emotions in a circle, just like primary colors. As you move out from the center, the intensity dials down. So rage at the center becomes anger, and then just annoyance on the edge. And the emotions on opposite sides are, well, opposites, like joy and sadness. It's literally a map to your inner world. So how do you actually use this map? It's super simple, just 3 steps. First, just pick a feeling you're having and find it on the wheel. Second, ask yourself that key question. Okay, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What is it trying to get me to focus on? And third, what does this feeling want me to do? What action is it pushing me towards? This simple little practice can totally transform you from just being a passenger on your emotional roller coaster to being the one who actually understands the controls.
Okay, let's keep building on this because our feelings, they don't exist in a bubble. They are profoundly social. They mix together in all these complex ways, and man, do they spread from person to person.
So just like you mix primary colors to get a whole rainbow of other shades, our primary emotions combine to create more complex, nuanced feelings. The example of nostalgia is just perfect. When you mix the primary feeling of joy with the primary feeling of sadness, what do you get? You get nostalgia, that bittersweet feeling of looking back on a happy memory that's now gone. It's not just one or the other, it's both, all blended together. And this idea gets even bigger. Think about it. When you mix anger and disgust, you get the feeling of contempt. When joy and trust get together, you get love. And when fear and surprise crash into each other, you get awe. Now, this isn't just some fun little exercise. It helps us get a much richer vocabulary for what we're actually experiencing. And when we can name our feelings with more precision, we get more power over them. It's what psychologists sometimes call name it to tame it. Super powerful. And this brings us to something that is so important about how we connect with people. Feelings are contagious. We are hardwired to automatically and, unconsciously read the emotional signals of other people, their face, their tone of voice, and to start feeling a version of that emotion ourselves. And this has a huge impact. Think about a leader whose calm steadies a whole team in a crisis versus the one whose panic just sends everyone into a downward spiral. Or the parent whose anxiety just spreads through the whole house before a family trip. The emotions you put out there, they're not just for you. You're broadcasting them to everyone around you. Okay, I know that might sound a little scary, like we're all just victims of whatever feelings are floating around us. But the good news, and this is the really hopeful part of this whole story, is that we are not stuck. We are wired for connection, and we are absolutely built for growth. And this whole idea of growth is backed up by some really cool facts about how we're wired. First up, our brains have these special cells called mirror neurons, which are basically the biological foundation for empathy. They help us connect and understand each other. Second, altruism, doing things for the good of others, isn't just a nice idea. It strengthens our social bonds and gives us a deep sense of purpose. And third, and this is so important, optimism is not something you're just born with. It is a learned skill. It's the ability to look at reality, even when it's tough, with the belief that you can find a way forward. It's all about adding one tiny word to your challenges. I can't figure this out yet. All right, so we've covered the biology, the why, the social side. We've even seen that we can grow. Now for the really practical stuff. How do we actually put emotional intelligence into practice? Moment by moment, day by day. This question really ties it all together, doesn't it? If our feelings are contagious, and if we have the ability to grow, then we are faced with a pretty profound choice. We are all emotional transmitters. The question is, are we just broadcasting on autopilot, or are we intentionally choosing the signal we send out into the world? And to help us make that choice, there's this simple but honestly super powerful framework called the 6 seconds model. It's an elegant and really actionable process for practicing emotional intelligence. You can think of it as a continuous cycle, a way of navigating any situation with more awareness and more intention. So the model breaks down into 3 key steps, or pursuits. First step, know yourself. The goal here is just to be more aware. You just pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? That's the starting point, just gathering the data instead of reacting blindly. Second, choose yourself. Here, the goal is to be more intentional. Once you know what you're feeling, you ask, okay, what options do I have here? This is where you bring your thinking brain into the game, taking a step back from that raw emotion to look at different ways forward. This step gives you your power back. And finally, give yourself. The goal here is to be more purposeful. And this is where you ask the deeper question, what do I truly want? This connects your choice in this moment to your bigger values, to the person you really want to be.
Know, choose, give. It's a cycle you can practice in literally any situation.
And that brings us right back to where we started. We began with that biological fact of the 6-second chemical rush of an emotion. It's a window of time. It can be a moment of pure, blind reaction, or it can be a moment of intentional practice. So the question I want to leave you with is this. In your next challenging moment, in that tiny space between what happens to you and how you respond, what will you do with your 6 seconds? Will you pause to know yourself, choose yourself, and give yourself? The power to be smarter with your feelings is right there, just waiting for you to use it.